Well, this morning I'm going to talk about Zazen off the cushion, bodhisattva activity in the marketplace. And I see the marketplace, when I say that, I'm always thinking about the 10 ox herding pictures where the little guy finally catches the ox and experiences enlightenment, and then he goes to the marketplace afterwards. So whenever I say the marketplace, that's really what I'm referencing, is the 10 ox herding pictures. And if you haven't ever seen them before, look them up. So stillness and activity. Those two, the whole scope of our practice is contained within the meaning of those two words and with the actual expression of those two things. Stillness, Zazen, activity are activities in the world. In these past few months, we've spent quite a bit of time considering the stillness aspect of Zazen, which truly is a small part of our lives. It's actually sitting on the cushion. We spend the majority of our waking moments engaged in activity of some kind. And perhaps someone mentions taking the mind of Zazen off the cushion and into our daily lives. And before you get me on the mind of Zazen, this is an expression I'm going to use, but we all know that in Zazen, the mind is what we are not exactly, we're watching that mind. So really it's shall I call it the posture of Zazen. We're taking the posture of Zazen off the cushion and into our daily lives. And we ask ourselves, what does that mean? And how do I do that? And we begin to experiment with that. So actually, there are many important teachings about activity. Activity is an important concept in Buddhism, particularly the activity of Buddhas and bodhisattvas, which in the bodhisattva's case is the practice of the 6 paramitas, which I'm not going to detail today. Activity arises from emptiness itself. I think of it as a pulse of the absolute. It's kind of this, and there it is. Even though we're taught that the absolute has no characteristics, the absolute arising into form is activity. The process where that, the unborn, the uncreated, arises into form through this, which is also that, is described in the teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination, a great realization of the Buddhas at the time of his enlightenment. Dogen Zenji writes about these 12 links in the 23rd fascicle of Shobogenzo, Bukkyo, on what the Buddha taught. So this is what Dogen Zenji says. The 12 links in the chain of dependent origination are first, the darkness of spiritual ignorance. Second, the deliberate actions that derive from that ignorance. Third, becoming aware of things. I find that's really interesting. Ignorance comes first, actions derived from the ignorance, and awareness doesn't even arise until the third stage of this process, becoming aware of things. Fourth, giving name and form to things. So ignorance, action, awareness, and then naming, giving name and form to things. Fifth, activating the six senses. So this action has taken place without the six senses. Sixth, making contact through the senses with what arises. So all of a sudden we've got these wonderful senses and we make contact with the things that we have named. Seventh, being stimulated through one's senses. So now sensation comes in. Eighth, craving. Once sensations arise, once we get really into our senses, there it is, craving. Ninth, grasping after. So then we have craving and then we want to hang on to it. 10th, causing to come into existence. So with craving and grasping, then we create. 11th, giving birth to. And 12th, aging unto death. So you can see this chain of dependent origination happens everywhere in our lives. It happens to us in our lives. It happens in every process that we actually encounter in our lives. This chain of dependent origination is always behind what's happening. I mean, this is a brilliant description of the whole process of birth and death of everything that we work with. There's very little here that is beyond our ability to influence the action that we take or the outcome of that action, with the possibility of ignorance and the action that arises from the ignorance. And the activity described here is what begins the process of cause and effect, otherwise known as karma, activity, and its consequences. So right about now, you might be excused for feeling intimidated by this process. One of the daunting realizations in the practice of Zazen is that this one is ultimately responsible for everything that happens in this one's life. I don't get to blame it on anybody else. What comes to me is what I have to deal with, and I'm responsible for the way I deal with it. It's horrifying, actually, when you get to that realization. And it doesn't happen up here. It happens with this. You just know it. And you go, oh, no. So, but it's true. Every action we take matters. Every single one. Every action that we take sends ripples out into the world around us. So since our activity is so consequential, how do we condition that activity off the cushion? How do we take that posture of Zazen into the marketplace of our lives? Since as Mahayana Buddhists, we strive to emulate the behavior of the bodhisattvas, perhaps we take as our example Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, the bodhisattva of universal virtue. When we recite the names of Buddha during the meal chant or during the bodhisattva ceremony, which we just had this last Wednesday evening, we mention Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, who represents enlightening activity, the functioning of wisdom in the world. Taigen Dan Leighton, in his book Bodhisattva Archetypes, which I highly recommend if you want to find out about any bodhisattva, has a very long chapter on Samantabhadra with special attention to Samantabhadra's 10 vows. Leighton Roshi says, Samantabhadra and Manjushri are often paired together as attendants on either side of Shakyamuni Buddha, with Manjushri on his lion representing the essence of wisdom, and Samantabhadra mounted on an elephant representing the application of wisdom actively benefiting the world. So in representations of the Buddha, you'll see Manjushri with his sword on the right side, cutting through delusion. And on the left, you'll see Samantabhadra on his elephant in various different postures. In this arrangement of the altar, this is the Manjushri side that I'm sitting on, and that's the Samantabhadra side that Edo-san sits on when she comes to visit. So, and over the years, she switched back and forth depending on which aspect of wisdom she intends to embody. Samantabhadra is associated with the Flower Ornament Sutra and the Lotus Sutra. In Buddhist iconography, the elephant that he rides represents enlightened practice and awareness. So whenever you see an elephant in Buddhist iconography, that's representing enlightened practice and awareness. Leighton Roshi says that statues of Samantabhadra are rare in Mahayana temples. And I would have to say that my experience also reinforces that opinion of his. It was hard to find Samantabhadra statues in Japan. Perhaps we should pay more attention to this bodhisattva who teaches how to take the mind of Zazen into the world. Calm, deliberate activity arising from clear, considered intention and dignity. Dignity. So these are the activities that Samantabhadra performs, and these are actually his 10 vows. So venerating, praising, and making offerings to Buddhas, devotion to awakening and to those who have awakened, confessing past misdeeds, as we do every month in our bodhisattva ceremony, rejoicing in the happiness of others, requesting the teachings, requesting Buddhas not to enter nirvana, studying the Dharma in order to teach it, benefiting all beings, and transferring one's merit to others, as we do in the echo every time we have a ceremony. May the merit of this sutra extend to each thing in all places. We transfer the merit of our practice to others for their benefit. So those are Samantabhadra's activities. And considering Samantabhadra's teaching, we see now how our stillness on the cushion gives rise to the activity of wisdom in the world. the functioning of wisdom in the world. We cultivate calm. We make space for clear, considered intention to arise. And we practice the forms that sculpt us into dignified, harmonious people. These qualities can have a great impact in a world of name-calling, hysterical overreaction, and less than dignified behavior. Activity also arises from the clear, considered intention to do only good. We say that in our meal chant, to practice good, to save all sentient beings, and to accomplish our Buddha way. These qualities can, in the bodhisattva ceremony, we recite the 3 pure precepts. We vow to refrain from all evil. An evil is defined as action that creates attachments. We vow to make every effort to live in enlightenment. We vow to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings. These 3 mighty vows, along with the 10 grave precepts, guide the activity of our bodhisattva lives. And we shouldn't forget the 4 bodhisattva vows that we will chant at the end of this talk. We have many guidelines for our activity off the cushion. We engage the mind of Zazen off the cushion, the posture of Zazen, each Sunday in Samu or temple cleaning, or in work period during the monthly retreat, or during our monthly day of work practice. Instead of placing attention on the breath, although we might also use that as an additional tool, we place attention on our activity. When our attention wanders, we bring it back to our activity. This is work practice. So we dust the altar with complete attention. We sweep the sidewalk or the driveway with complete attention. We clean the toilet with complete attention. And we don't abandon this attentiveness when we leave the zendo. I grind my coffee with complete attention. I boil my eggs with complete attention. I read to my child with complete attention. I listen to my friends with complete attention. Such training of attention opens the possibility of seeing through into the ultimate reality beyond the world of things and senses. These small, seemingly innocuous activities are enlightening activities, the functioning of wisdom in the world. We should not be careless with them. Every action matters. It's easy to take up the idea of separation between our zazen in the zendo, in our meditation area at home, and the posture of zazen during the activities of everyday life. This is a fixed view that can be discarded. It's not easy to corral attention in this way. Thinking mind is easily bored. Distractions are attractive. Wholehearted activity with attention is the path to bring the posture of Zazen into daily life. I've discussed that activity arises from emptiness, from spiritual ignorance, from the intention to do good, from the functioning of wisdom in the world. Activity is a primal movement that drives all life. Zazen off the cushion is the activity of Buddhas and bodhisattvas in the world. We take Samantabhadra as our guide and engage the world with calm, deliberate activity arising from clear, considered intention and dignity. I encourage you to practice this. It's very daunting to cultivate this kind of attention. And you also don't want to get so caught up in it that you ignore everything around you. It's something that during the day you can find a way to bring your attention to what you're doing. It's a very interesting process. I think you'll learn a lot by doing that. So I really do encourage you to find a few times throughout the day to open your attention and focus on your activity, whatever it is that you're doing. Just be there for that one thing. Okay, so that's all I have for today. Are there comments or questions that you'd like to pose? I see Dennis grinning over there.
Not an active question.
Yes, Mickey.
I'm very interested in what you have to say about Samantabhadra. And I remember so well that chapter about this bodhisattva in Jan Layton's book. And my mother had a collection of elephants. Most of them have gone to my son. I still have several. And Samantabhadra is the elephant that represents Samantabhadra, is the elephant with his trunk raised. His trunk raised, he's ready to grab stuff with his prehensile trunk and do something with it. I have 3 of these little, they're very small, and I keep them in I keep them on a lower shelf of a certain cabinet that I have in the living room. And every time that I'm looking at them, my heart goes, oh, Samantabhadra. But after you talk, I think that what I need to do is take one of those and put them on my altar in my shrine room to balance Manjushri. I'm going to do that as soon as I get home.
There you go. Yeah.
Could you remind us the source of where you began with the list of arising, dependent arising? What's the original source?
That is Dogen Zenji in fascicle number 23, Shobogenzo. The name of the fascicle is Bukyo, on what the Buddha taught. And the translation that I used was Shasta Abbey's.
And was he referencing an earlier text, do you know?
I looked to see where that came from, and I did not see that he was referencing an earlier text.
The 12 links is pretty standard.
Yeah, it's very, it goes back to,
That's foundational.
goes back to the time of Buddha. It's in the Pali literature.
It's in the Pali
in
canon.
many different places.
Yeah, and there's multitude of teachings on that, on the chain of dependent origination. In fact, in Dogen Zenji says in that chapter that Pratyeka Buddhas only study those 12 links of dependent origination and practice. Their practice is based on that, only that. So.
What struck me about most of the traditional teachings you hear of the 12 links is karma in terms of rebirth from life to life.
Yes.
The karma in one life connects to the rising consciousness and name and form in another life. Dogen Zenji's twist on it, I think, makes it even more present. There's 12 links in every action.
Yes. Amir?
Thank you, Jikyo-san. I just wanted to flag for people in case you don't know, when you chant the Heart Sutra, when you get to the part that says no ignorance and also no extinction from it until no old age and death and also no extinction of it. Those are the 12 links. Those are the bookends of the 12 links. So that word until means ... Yes.
Means the whole thing.
So when you get to that part, you can think of it, those are the 12 links of dependent origination.
Yes. Our sutras are teachers. Anybody else? Okay, then.